Well, good day, all. Today's topic is going to be on safety data sheets, or commonly known as SDSs. We produce SDSs per job, depending on what the materials are that we're going to be using on them. And also we have it for consumables like Hilti loads, their strips, the fuels we use in our lifts, the batteries we use both in our tools, or say they're lead acid batteries in our lifts. So today what I want to go over here is how to locate the SDSs we have on file. If there's ever one that's not there for a material or a consumable that we're using on site, there's two reasons. It may not require what's called an SDS. It could be considered what's called an article, and we'll go over that in a bit too. But other than that, I will get started by sharing my screen and showing you, first of all, how foremen locate the SDS files within our platform or our cloud-based platform. And so I'm going to share my screen here, and the first thing that the foreman is going to want to do is they're going to, let's see, why aren't you sharing? Oh, there it is. There we go. So the first thing the foreman is going to do is open up his tablet, his iPad, and he'll go to Ignite and to the Foreman tab. Within the Foreman tab, you open that up, and if you scroll all the way down here, it's going to say Safety -AHA SSP SDS HAZCOM. This is the folder where all of our SDSs are located. So we open that up. It's just taking a minute for some reason. And we're seeing SDSs. So we go ahead and we open up that folder. And you can see that by and large, most of our SDS files are all categorized by manufacturers. And so this can kind of be a little bit odd in a ways, because if you look at Loctite, for instance, it's under their corporate name is Henkel. And OSI is also a Henkel company. So that's kind of like Alliance Partitions actually has a parent company named PowerCo Drywall. So that's what this instance is going to be based on. So today what I thought we would do, excuse me, is let's talk about something that really has some implications, both physically and toxicologically speaking, or that's not good for you. And it can, and we're going to look here, and as you can see, I'm highlighting lead board. So let's go ahead and open up lead board, and we'll go to the SDS on gypsum lined lead board. We use this wherever we install this, in x-ray rooms primarily. There's a few other applications, but primarily in doctors' offices or hospitals or clinics where they have a lab or something that's going to be using x-rays, because the lead keeps the x-rays from escaping that vicinity. So the first thing you want to see is on the first page here is the identification. The product name is lead lined gypsum board. Synonyms are lead lined wallboard. Recommended use, radiation shielding. This particular manufacturer is Mayco Industries, and they're based out of Birmingham, Alabama. So all SDS sheets are set up with 16 elements. So the first element has to do with what the product is, the identification. Number two is hazards identification. So here we're going to see that it's a carcinogen, which means it causes cancer. It also can have reproductive toxicity, meaning it can mess with reproductive organs, and also specific target organ toxicity with repeated exposures. The category 1B, 1A, and 1 you can go into with the hazard communication standards, but primarily that there is not as important as these words right here, because we know what this means. Carcinogen means it causes cancer. Reproductive toxicity means it messes with you being able to have children. And the last one is specific target toxicity. And this is where heavy metals will just embed themselves and never leave you. And so one thing with lead is it's very toxic to the brain, believe it or not, but other organs as well. And then they're going to have danger, the label elements, and this goes back to when we talked about how to read the HAZCOM sheets that we use. So the hazard statement is lead may cause cancer, may damage fertility or the unborn child, may cause harm to breastfed children, causes damage to central nervous system, which of course is your brain and your nerves, especially spinal column, blood formation in kidneys. And so there's another primary organ you don't want to really screw up is your kidneys. You got two of them, but if they both start getting toxicity levels of lead, then that's going to make them messed up. And also your cardiovascular system through prolonged and repeated exposure, meaning that it can embed itself within your heart or your veins and arteries. The antinomity or dust or fumes will be an irritant, and antinomity, which is a form of lead, causes nasal septal ulcerations and stomach lining irritations. So the appearance of this particular product is gray with bluish lead sheet applied to paper, face, gypsum, or sheetrock. The physical state is solid and it is odorless. So now this here is the symbol of one of the 9 symbols that we use in the HAZCOM part of our global harmonized system, saying that this has toxicity to us, to humans. Then within this, still within number 2, it's talking about precautionary statements and prevention. So obtain special use instructions before. So for instance, if we're doing lead board, we do a lead board training. I do it with whoever's going to do it. We have some people already within the company that have this training, and so we feel confident that they can go out to any job and hang lead board with the proper precautions. It says, do not handle until all safety precautions have been read and understood. Use PPE as required. Wash face, hands, and exposed skin thoroughly after handling. Don't eat, drink, or smoke while installing this product. Only use outdoors or in well-ventilated areas, and do not breathe the dust, fumes, gas, mist, vapors, or spray. So going back into this, the PPE as required. So we use Tyvek suits, booties. We tape that all up. We use N95 respirators, face shields if necessary, but at least safety glasses. And your Tyvek hoodie or suit will also have a hoodie on it. We wear gloves, and the gloves are only used for the installation of the lead board. And once we're done with that, they're thrown away with our overall protection, our clothing protection. The other thing is we want to make sure that any clothes that we are wearing underneath the protective garbs are not washed in our washing machines with other family members' clothing. If you're going to wash it in your own washing machine, make sure to wash that particular set of clothing that you are wearing any day that you're handling lead board by itself, and then rinse your washing machine out prior to use with anything else. Just run it through a rinse cycle. The primary thing is you don't want to cross-contaminate anybody else's stuff with your stuff. And this is really important. Lead is becoming a big thing in this day and age, and we just don't want to pass it on to the younger ones. The precautionary statements in response: if exposed or concerned, get medical advice and attention. If inhaled, you have to leave the room and get fresh air and rest in a comfortable position. If swallowed, call a poison control center, and that is 1-800-222-1222. That's the national number that works for whatever region you're in the United States. It says store it and lock it up. Pretty hard to lock up sheets of drywall, but do the best you can to keep it stored and keep it away from people. Always do put a sign on it that it's hazardous material, do not touch, only authorized persons able to handle it. And then disposal of the contents in the appropriate way. Lead has to be disposed of independently. So if you're scrapping out a job, you have lead board, you have some scraps of it, you will want to peel the lead off the drywall before you throw the drywall in the dumpster. The lead has to be taken to an approved site or taken back to one of the shops, and we'll make sure we get rid of it correctly. And then other information, it's very toxic to aquatic life and has long-lasting effects, and also very toxic to just aquatic life. And then it goes over number 3 is the composition and ingredients. So lead, so by weight, the percentage of weight, it lifts out a lot of things. So basically what I would say is you would want to make sure that this has to do with everything that's in that sheet of rock: cellulose, calcium sulfite dihydrate, that's your gypsum, and then your lead. Number 4 item, and this is the same in all SDSs, is your first aid measures. And so you can go through this real quick and you can see that there's a lot of stuff that you need to do if by chance you come in contact with lead. Most important symptoms and effects, both acute and delayed. So these are another things that you would want to be aware of whenever using this type of material, so that you know that down the road, if you have some of these symptoms, that you may want to seek medical attention. Number 5 is always the fire and firefighting measures. And so here again, if this happens to catch on fire, you want to use foam or CO2 or a dry chemical. Do not use water. Specific hazards arising from the use of this could be toxic fumes. Explosion data on this particular product, there is none or none known. And then back again to the protective equipment as precautions for firefighters. The one main reason is if there's any instance where you have to call the firefighters to come to a site because you have a fire and you have this product on site, you'd always want to make sure that they know that there is the potential of lead contamination in the fire. Even though the drywall doesn't burn, just by heating it up, lead does melt at a very low rate and starts to give off fumes or at a low temperature. Accidental release measures. So here again, it goes over, and this is number 6, and you will want to go over all of this. And like it says, for emergency responders, wear respiratory protection, wear PPE, gloves, goggles, where appropriate, outer garments to protect clothing. But personal precautions: evaluate personnel for safe use, avoid contact with skin and inhalation of dust, use PPE as recommended in Section 8. So we're going to be getting to Section 8, but here again, they go over everything, and they mentioned that a HEPA filtered vacuum or wet cleaning. So we do have HEPA vacuums within APS, and that would be our preferred means of cleaning up any dust. So when you're cutting drywall that has lead attached to it, you got to be cleaning up that with a HEPA filter. You do want to keep the dust down. Sweeping compound helps, but if you're using lead board in that area, let's be a little bit more cautious and use a HEPA vac to pull up all the dust. And then the secondary hazards: clean contaminated objects, observing all your environmental regulations. Handling and storage. So go over all of this. There is an OSHA standard that pertains to this. We could also look within the Washington standards, but as far as storage goes, just make sure it's covered, that it's signed, do not touch, stay away, hazardous material, whatever, however you want to label it and sign it. Just make sure that other people stay away. And then the one thing that it's saying here, strong oxidizing agents, you want to keep away. That's an incompatible materials. So you would take a little research to find out what these strong oxidating agents could be. Item 8, exposure controls and PPE. So here's all of your stuff for exposure guidelines. Here's your engineering controls. Use contained procedures, enclosures, exhaust ventilation, and other engineering controls to maintain aerosols below the exposure limit. If user operations generate dust, fumes, or mist, ventilation, keep exposure of airborne contaminants. So this is where you may want to, if the room has been sheeted on the outside and you just have a door going in and out, and that's the preferable way of dealing with lead board, is that the exteriors of the area are done first, and that way you can close off the doorways with visqueen and make yourself a little doorway so that you can isolate any dust that's produced to just that area where everybody's wearing the correct PPE. And then it goes into the individual protection measures of PPE. Eye face protection, use safety glasses with side shields or chemical goggles. And then skin or body protection, use the protective clothing. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to use the Tyvek coveralls with hoodies, booties over our boots, and work gloves. But they're going to, if need be, we can also wear latex or nitrile gloves underneath our work gloves as a second form of defense to keep from getting contaminated. The respiratory protections that they call for actually are looking for N100 filter cartridge, which we do have those. So we have been using N95s, but we can also go ahead and issue out a half face respirator with the N100 particulate cartridges. And we also want to make sure that whenever you guys are using this kind of equipment, that we get you fit tested so that we know that it's 100% sealed and everything that you're breathing in and out is going through those filters as far as coming in. The other thing, though, is if you have to wear a half face or an N95, you need to be clean shaven. So you can't even have this like my little beard here. Everything's got to fit around your face tight. It doesn't do any good if it doesn't. Number 9, we'll deal with the physical and chemical properties. So you can see the melting point is at 600 degrees centigrade. I can't tell you what that is, but you can look. What you can always do is take a temperature that's in centigrade, plug it into Google, and say, I want to know what it is in Fahrenheit, and that'll give you the melting point, and also the boiling point. And so you can see here that the boiling and melting point are roughly the same, meaning at once it starts to boil, it can give off gas. So it goes off a lot of stuff here. It's all chemical things, but there you go. That's the main thing to know, is that 600 degrees Celsius or centigrade, excuse me, isn't all that hot, believe it or not. It's you can melt lead with a propane torch. Moving on down, we'll go to number 10, and that's stability and reactivity. And so it's stable under most conditions, which is a good thing for us. And it's chemical, it's stable under normal conditions as well. The possibility of hazardous reactions, none under normal use. So here again, if we're just hanging it and we're doing everything we should be, there's really not a lot to be concerned about. Conditions to avoid exposure to heat. So if there's a heater blowing where you're working, or if it's excessively hot, you may want to cool it down. But that's not a main thing, because the heat they're referring to here is quite a bit hotter. And it talks about the strong oxidizing agents again, and then the hazardous decomposition of products would be the lead oxide fumes. It's toxicological information. Here again, we can read through this: inhalation, eye contact, skin contact, ingestion, and component information. Here's a key one. Lead is slowly absorbed by ingestion and inhalation and poorly absorbed through the skin. If absorbed, lead will accumulate in the body with low rates of excretion, leading to long-term buildup. Part of the risk management is to take blood samples from workers for analysis to ensure that exposure limits are acceptable. If need be, we will always send you to get a lead blood test to make sure that if you've been overly exposed, we're going to make sure that you know what that is. And we pay for that. We send you to the clinic to get you tested. And then there's a lot of information here on its toxicological effects. This is anybody that's going to be hanging lead board. When I do their training, I says, you need to read through this stuff. You need to know, because your best defense for you is you. I can give you the information, but I can't be there to make sure that everything that's happening with your body is good. So you want to read through the toxicity stuff very, very carefully and have a good understanding of what it's saying. So that's always section 11 in an SDS, no matter what the product is that you're using. You want to be keenly aware of the toxicological information. Let's go ahead and go to number 12, the ecological information. Now this is important nowadays because we don't want to get it into our water. Remember, if it goes in a storm drain, it probably ends up in the creek or in Puget Sound or the ocean around these parts in Washington. And even though that now that we've branched out into Oregon, we live in coastal states and we have lots of water, and most of the storm systems go in Washington to the bay or to the river. They don't have treatment. I know in Portland they do treat some of their runoff, but those are issues. And do they treat for lead? Probably not so much. As I'm scrolling down, you'll see bioaccumulation. So this has to do with anything that's outside of the humans. So this could be plant life, this could be fish life, this could be any other mammals or amphibians or anything, any living organism. This has a negative impact on it. So you always want to make sure that we're taking care of the scrap and what we're doing is correct and in the best interest of everything concerned. Mobility. So lead components were particularly settled out due to the fairly low solubility and particularly dissolved. In soil, lead and compounds are generally not very mobile. And the one thing that I can tell you is I like to do a little bit of gold panning and gold prospecting. And one thing that we do is when we're out on a stream, running either gold pans or even running a little bit bigger equipment like sluice boxes and stuff. If it's an actively fished stream, one of the byproducts that we look at as a favorable thing is we remove lead. We catch a lot of lead in our gold mining equipment because it's heavy and it hangs up in the riffles. So lead's heavy and it settles out quickly. Disposal considerations, and so here's where we can go ahead and look, and it tells you that disposal should be in accordance with the applicable regional, national, and local laws and regulations. Disposal should be in accordance with the same thing. So what we would do here is wherever we're working, we're going to look up the local county, city, or the Washington state information and find out where is there a place that we can dispose of this lead scrap legally. Under 14 is your transport information. And so this doesn't have a lot to do with us because we have suppliers bring it to us as a rule. As you can see, this product is not regulated for domestic transport by line, air, or rail. So what we would have to do, if anything, is maybe put a DOT sign. But to us, I don't see anywhere here where we would have to have the 4-tier diamond on the side of the truck when we're hauling lead board. 15 is the regulatory information, and so this is pertaining to this particular product, and there's a whole bunch of acronyms over here, and it says it complies with all those. And then those acronyms, here's the legend for them. And then the U.S. federal regulations, this is primarily what we have to consider ourselves because we are in the United States. Hazard categories, and then the Clean Water Act. We'd want to look at that just to make sure that we aren't contaminating water. And then Proposition 65 for California shows up on everything. In California Proposition 65, they have it on everything. And what it means, it could possibly cause cancer. Now we know with lead, that's a true statement, but they have it on some stuff that we would never consider causing cancer, but just because of the way that that proposition is written, it is. U.S. state right to know regulations. They mention New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania. In Washington state, you do have the right to know. You have the right to know and ask to see every SDS for every product that you handle. And it is our responsibility as an employer to provide you that information. And that has to be on company time. It's just the way it is. So anyhow, that pretty much goes over number 15. The last item is 16, other information. Issue date, so this particular document was written on the 29th of May, 2015. It hasn't been revised. And it always has a disclaimer that this SDS sheet is correct to the best of our knowledge, and we'll just leave it at that. So that is your basic SDS. If you ever have any questions, you can always, of course, reach out to me on how to read those. So for today, The only other thing I would say is, just so you know where to look for certain SDSs, like I say, most things are by manufacturers. There's a couple exceptions. We have miscellaneous accessories. Under this, you're going to see there's a lot of like spray adhesives. We have a few cutting blades. We have some panel adhesives. Our clear marking paints and our colored marking paints are there. And then the Seymour spray paint for galvanizing. So if we've been welding and we have to spray our welds, we have that there. The other one is the miscellaneous accessories to equipment. And this is where you're going to find your fuels and your lead acid batteries. There's always good stuff. And remember that just because it says it's Chevron Texaco regular, pretty much doesn't matter to the manufacturer. Most, say gasoline, for instance, is pretty similar from one to other. We do have Tesoro here as well. Diesel is diesel. Hydraulic oils pretty much are the same. You know, there's little differences, but by and large. And then we use the 1540 on the motor oil if need be. Propane, there again, is pretty standardized. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we would want to talk about. Oh, so when you're scanning through this, all of these that are listed like this sit in a master folder at the main office in Arlington. If you ever come across an SDS manufacturer that has the capital letters NEW, that means that was something that I have just loaded into our catalog here of SDS products, like this one, new American Gypsum, or new John Mansfield, or new Nudo, or new Osmos. The only reason it has new in front of it, those documents have not been printed off and put into the hard copies at the Arlington office. By regulation, all we have to do is have all of our stuff electronically available to everybody. If an employee requests a copy, we'll print them off the copy and hand it to them. That's not a problem. But remember that sometimes if you're looking for a product name, it's going to have new in front of it. That just means it hasn't been included in the hard copies at the Arlington office yet. Remember that if you ever have any questions concerning any safety issue, safety topic, please reach out to me. My email address is paul@alliancepartitions.com. My cell number is area code 253-720-6449. And with that, I'd like to wrap up today's Safety, Sense, and More video cast, and hope that you found this interesting and informative, and that you'll be able to use this information into the future. With that, have a safe day at work, and we will see you soon. Bye for now.